Some people travel to find peace, others just want to disappear. I booked a villa. 2 weeks, no return ticket. No one knew where I went, not even me. They said it was a retreat, but what I found wasn't peace. Before we begin, if dark stories speak to you, please consider subscribing to Echoes in the Dark. Your support keeps the silence speaking. I stepped inside the old villa, my backpack feeling lighter than the weight pressing down on my chest. Villa Adharma was supposed to be my escape, a place to disappear, but I already knew running away rarely worked. Silence greeted me like an old, cynical friend. No laughter, just whispers of shadows that I couldn't fight. I deliberately switched off my phone, shutting out a world that no longer seemed to understand me. A break from everything, I told myself. But this villa, with its cracked wooden walls and towering windows staring into the abyss, was never truly empty. There was something behind that mirror. When I looked, my reflection moved a fraction slower than I did. A subtle delay that sent a chill down my spine. The air smelled stale, heavy with memories I didn't want to face. I unpacked my few belongings, each sound echoing in the quiet like a warning. My thoughts spiraled, memories I tried to lock away. The silence pressed in on me, making the space feel smaller, suffocating. I caught myself staring at the mirror again. It wasn't just a reflection anymore. It felt like another presence, watching, waiting. I whispered aloud, "Who are you?" But only my own voice answered back. As the sun dipped below the horizon, shadows stretched long across the floor. The villa seemed to breathe with me, alive in a way that wasn't comforting. I knew I wasn't alone here. Not really, and somewhere deep inside, a part of me already felt trapped. Night settled in without warning. One moment, there was light slipping between the curtains. The next, only the dim lamp in the hallway kept the darkness from swallowing everything whole. I couldn't remember the last time I feared the dark until now. I sat on the edge of the old bed, listening. The villa was too quiet, not peaceful, unnaturally quiet, like the kind of silence that falls over a room after something terrible happens. And then, I heard it. Footsteps, light, measured, and just behind the hallway wall, I stood, heart racing, trying to convince myself it was just the building settling, old wood groaning against time. But the steps, they were too deliberate, too human. I waited by the door, listening. Nothing. When I opened it, the hallway was empty. And then, as I turned back toward the mirror across the room, I saw it, my reflection again. But this time, it wasn't mimicking me. It was already standing, already watching. It smiled. I didn't. I stumbled back, blinking, and it was gone. Back to perfect mimicry. Maybe it was the stress. Maybe I hadn't slept in days. But some part of me didn't believe that. Later, I found myself talking aloud, just to break the tension. Maybe I deserved all of it. My voice cracked, even in the quiet. I wasn't even sure what I meant by it. The accident, the fallout, the death. The mirror didn't answer, but it didn't need to. It was always listening. I found an old notebook in one of the drawers, half-filled pages, dusty, untouched. I tore out the written ones and started fresh. Day 1. The silence here is louder than the city I left. I don't know if I came to heal or to punish myself. The mirror watches. Maybe I'll ask it why. I put the notebook down, not knowing if I'd keep writing. The villa felt like it was already inside my head, rearranging things I'd locked away. That night, as I lay in bed, I closed my eyes for only a moment, just one. But when I opened them, I wasn't the only one in the room. The figure stood at the far corner of the room, still, silent, but unmistakably there. I didn't move. I didn't blink. I didn't breathe. It wasn't a dream. Dreams don't feel like this. They don't make your skin go cold from the inside out. But when I finally dared to sit up and switch on the lamp, the room was empty. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. It was subtle, like walking into a room where someone had just whispered your name and left. In the morning, I found muddy footprints in the hallway, just one set, leading from the door to the mirror. I didn't panic. That was the strangest part. A small voice inside me said, "Let it happen. You're not here to feel safe anyway." I spent the day walking around the villa, not just to clear my head, but to test my reality. I opened every door, ran my hand along every wall. The rooms seemed to shift, sometimes longer, sometimes narrower, or maybe it was just my mind playing tricks. There was one locked door at the end of the west hallway, old, with rusted hinges and no keyhole. Every time I passed it, I felt something behind it, breathing, watching, waiting. I didn't try to open it, not yet. That night, the mirror began whispering, not in words, in memories. I saw my mother, screaming at me to get out of the car. The rain, the spinning lights, the shattered glass. I saw her hands covered in blood, and mine doing nothing. Frozen, that was years ago. I hadn't thought of it in so long. The mirror made me remember. I screamed at it, but my reflection just stood there, calm, unmoved, and for the briefest moment, it wasn't even me. It looked like me, but older, worn, eyes to hollow, mouth smiling with a kind of pity that made me want to tear it off the wall. But I didn't, because maybe that version of me wasn't wrong. Maybe it knew something I didn't. I didn't sleep that night, not truly. I closed my eyes, but my thoughts never did. They paced the halls of my mind the same way I now paced the halls of the villa. At some point, I stopped looking at the mirror. I taped a bedsheet over it, not out of fear, not exactly. It was something else. Respect, maybe, or shame. Still, I heard it behind the fabric, breathing with me, or against me. I couldn't tell anymore. On the fourth day, the villa no longer felt like a building. It felt like a brain, a mind, with corridors like thoughts, doors like trauma, some locked, some too easily opened, and I was just a thought drifting through it, trying to remember what I was before all of this. I returned to the west hallway. The door was still there, still locked, but this time, something had changed. The air around it was thick, humming, like it was alive, or awake. I pressed my ear to it. I heard a voice. No, not a voice. My voice? You can't keep running, not forever. I staggered back, heart pounding. I hadn't spoken, but the voice was undeniably mine, clearer than any thought I'd ever had. I went outside. The woods surrounded the villa in all directions, but they weren't comforting either. The trees leaned in, too tall, too quiet, as if they were holding their breath. I sat by the cliff's edge behind the villa, watching fog crawl up from the ravine. My notebook was in my hand before I realized I'd brought it. Day 4. The mirror sees more than it shows. I think it remembers who I was before I forgot. I used to believe pain was a phase. Now I wonder if happiness was. I wanted to cry, but the tears wouldn't come. The numbness had rooted too deep. Even sadness felt far away. When I returned to my room, the sheet had fallen, or had been pulled down. The mirror was exposed again, but this time, it didn't show my reflection. It showed the door, the locked one, and beyond it, a version of me sitting in a chair, staring blankly. His eyes were empty, but his mouth moved. He said, "You're not getting out of here, unless you face it." I stood in front of the locked door for what felt like hours. It didn't resist when I finally touched the handle. The metal was ice cold, too cold, but it turned easily. The lock had never been real. The only thing stopping me had always been me. Inside, the room was not what I expected. It wasn't decayed like the rest of the villa. It was clean, stark, white walls, a single wooden chair in the center, and a mirror, taller than any I'd seen. I stepped inside, and the door clicked shut behind me. The air changed. The silence here wasn't empty. It was dense, like walking into someone else's prayer. And there he was, sitting in the chair, the version of me from the mirror, older, worn, a face carved from grief. He didn't look up, just stared at the floor. "Who are you?" I asked. He chuckled, bitter, like he'd waited years for the question. "I'm who you become when you stop pretending." His voice was mine, but more tired, more honest. "I don't understand." "No, you don't want to? You built all this to forget. The villa, the vacation, even this conversation. None of this is real." I felt the walls breathe. I stumbled back. He stood up, walked toward me, not threatening, just tired of the lie. "You've already made your choice. You came here to end it. You dressed it up as escape, but deep down, you wanted to vanish." My knees buckled. It hit me then, not like a memory, but like a truth too big to ignore. I hadn't come here to heal. I'd come here to disappear. The bridge, the crash, the guilt, My mother's voice, the friends who stopped calling, the phone that never rang again, the funeral I skipped, the days spent under blankets, the nights I stared at the ceiling, begging for anything, even nightmares, just to feel something. He stepped aside and pointed at the mirror. Go on. Look. Maybe for once. Don't flinch. I looked. It didn't show a room anymore. It showed me, alone, in a bathtub full of red water. Wrists open, eyes closed. Silence. I fell to my knees. I wanted to scream, but my mouth betrayed me. No sound came. He leaned close and whispered, You're not dead yet, but you've already left. The door behind me had vanished. I was alone in the room of white walls and buried truths. But was I? I turned back to the mirror. The image was gone. No blood. No water. Just me. I looked. Alive, but barely. You still have time. The other me said, but not much. His face had softened. No longer accusing. Just tired. Like someone who'd carried the weight for too long and was ready to hand it back. I stood. My legs shook, but they held. Why show me all this? Because silence doesn't heal. It just delays the collapse. The room began to blur. The walls faded to gray, then black. Everything dissolved. The mirror, the other me, the house, and suddenly, I was back in the Villa's living room. Morning sun poured through the windows. Birds chirped. The world hadn't stopped just because I did. I walked to the mirror again. It showed my face, tired. Yes, scarred, haunted, but mine. There were no whispers now, no visions. Just a quiet that didn't feel like emptiness. It felt like beginning. I stepped outside. The air was sharp, clean. The path back to the village was visible again. As I walked away, I didn't look back. Not because I wasn't afraid, but because I was done letting fear speak louder than truth. Have you ever felt like you were just one thought away from disappearing? What would you do if your mind built a world to keep you from remembering who you really are? Let me know in the comments. Sometimes, facing the darkness isn't about defeating it. It's about learning to live with it.